For the past 5 months, I've been working on a narrative hack and slash game called Croak And Dagger. A game about a little frog dude on its journey to save its kids with the power of a baby frog that can turn to weapons.
How I got to work on this project was by lying, cheating, conniving, scheming, but mostly it was from me not caring. So if we rewind back a little bit to August of 2022, I'm laying in my bed, and suddenly I get an email from the director of my major basically stating, "We have a wonderful opportunity for our third years and up to work on an intercollegiate game. This will act as a great opportunity. Freshmen and sophomores, maybe in the future you'll be able to work on it with your peers." Now, I was and still am a sophomore. However, I never learned how to read, so I just shot up an email anyways. And before I knew it, I was in a virtual meeting being pitched 2 downright gorgeous games. It was from an art college, so there was a lot of really pretty designs and art, and I was like, "Ooh." But to be entirely honest, as good as the games looked, I wasn't really vibing with the whole structure. And at the time I was thinking I kind of want to work on something that is a bit more my own. So I kind of forgot about the whole thing, went back to what I was doing. Until suddenly, the professor emailed back. Second project that was pitched didn't have enough people interested, so it fell through. So now the professor had a bunch of people wanting to make a cool game without the cool game. So she just straight up asked, "You guys just want to come together to make a production studio course?"
Yeah. Are you ready?
And thus, our journey had begun. Granted, before our journey had actually begun, we were asked if we wanted to do a 2D or 3D game, because if the professor got a bunch of 3D art students and then we made a 2D game, that would kind of suck. So yeah, we decided on a 3D game before we ever thought of the actual idea. But besides that, our journey had now begun. We met up for the first time, which would actually be probably our only time, because since most of the project has been online, and there's a bunch of people on it, we've never been able to schedule a proper meeting. Hopefully that changes someday. But yeah, we came together and we pitched our ideas. Some ideas involving VR, changing art styles, multiplayer. Like with any ideas, some ideas are out of scope, just too hard, or just not interesting enough for us to actually go through with it. But we did have 2 ideas that we thought were really interesting. One was this idea for an amphibian hack and slash game, just because the whole idea and gameplay sounded super fun to play around with. And on the other side of the spectrum, we had an idea for a more narrative focused adventure about a game where you work with a person who can turn to a weapon, based on shows like Soul Eater or games like Boyfriend Dungeon. So, we were now comparing and contrasting a bunch of our ideas. We spent 2 weeks trying to think of what is our plan gonna be. Both is good. Yeah, both. So we combined our 2 ideas, creating Croak and Dagger. Main idea being that we keep the amphibian hack and slash idea, but now you got the kid that can turn to a weapon, which is now based on the frog life cycle, giving us a natural scope for the game, and just being a really cool way to integrate both ideas. Now it was time to start actually building this game. But before we could open up any game engine or art program, it was time to make an actual blueprint. We started drafting up a design doc, detailing how mechanics should operate, what the artist should take inspiration from with mood boards, and basic designs for our levels. It's pretty much always best to have some sort of blueprint, as without one, it tends to cause people to make a lot of disjointed work that doesn't fit together. If you asked a bunch of workers to just build a house with nothing, they would just make something that just wouldn't work structurally. Now with our design doc created, it was time for us to start working. We booted up a template of Unity's third-person character controller and got to work. With the, concept of having our main character be a frog, we had a lot of different ideas for how we wanted movement and combat to work. And we settled on a few ideas. For movement, we wanted Dagger. By the way, our main character is called Dagger, and the kid's name is Croak, because it's funny. Haha, get it? Because the Dagger's name is not the weapon one. Hehe.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
To be able to spring into the air and dash. Dashing was done pretty much immediately in the project's life cycle, with jumping being tweaked later on to allow the player to hold the jump button to jump higher. So we could have the little frog jumps. Everybody loves the little frog jumps. Now, as for combat, despite this being a hack and slash game, we only recently reworked it, and we're still working on it now. Combat is, a key element of these types of games, but it probably won't fully be done until the game is done. So, yeah. Just to give the general idea, though, we want Dagger to have two main forms of attacks, with a general set of combos to go in between everything. First being Dagger's tongue attack, which acts as a sort of ranged attack that will allow him to bring enemies closer to him. This tongue will be used in some of our movement to swing on branches. And our secondary attack, which will rely on our child character Croak. Isn't he cute? Adorable little frog child. Which will act as a basic melee attack. We are thinking that it will be a lot more damage than the tongue attack and be able to combo better. We also plan for the stats for fighting with Croak to change as the story progresses, since Croak will shift into different weapons depending on how you treat them throughout the story. Now, with all that fancy movement and combat out the way, what's the point of having a hack and slash game if you don't have anything to hack and slash? So it's time to add some enemies. Now, from what I know, no one on our team had ever worked with implementing AI into our game, so it was definitely a learning experience. The main concept for our enemies are simple: one melee enemy and one ranged enemy. Keep the scope down, and if we need more, we can always add it later. However, I think we would rather not kill our artists, considering they have to concept, sketch, model, texture, rig, and animate these creatures. I think we made the right decision. Our melee enemies is a little mosquito. He's got the shields and stuff and blades, looking cool as heck. And for our ranged enemies, we have a spider that shoots acid. With combat and enemies now added, it was time for us to be able to focus on these little scary guys. So let's pop in a little targeting system there. And now we're able to make combat just a little bit, cleaner. Although it did involve having to scramble through a lot of our code, because to add a system like this, it can be a bit weird, especially with the camera work. Speaking of scrambling through code, though, we are making a narrative game, which means we need a robust narrative system to track the player's choices. That was my job. A lot of the time I spent in this course was mostly learning how to implement Yarn Spinner, which is a really, really useful tool for implementing narrative elements in Unity. But that's a topic for another day. Right now, we need to worry about the fact that we now have all the building blocks for our game, which means we can start making some cool levels. Currently, we have outlined 3 basic levels: the tutorial level, the pre-cave level, and the cave level. These sound like how they function. The tutorial level will function as a basic tutorial for the player, and it has definitely had the most iterations through the past semester, mostly due to the fact that this is the level where everyone's been putting their stuff. This is where a lot of people have been learning Pro Build during Unity's terrain tool, so it has had a lot of changes. But it's very important to get this level right, as it introduces the player to the main mechanics and to the story. And to be honest, the level is not done at all yet, so it's still going to be getting a lot of changes. So we're hoping to polish that up, and now that a lot of our stuff is fully made, we can now do that. As for our next levels, they're still in the gray box state, which, if you don't know what a gray box is basically the basic structure of the level. So the main implementation of assets and mechanics hasn't even really started yet, but the main goal narratively is to challenge the player's parenting style, with the main plot being that Croak is a child and is afraid of the dark. You gotta help Croak, overcome that fear. How are you gonna help Croak overcome it? Are you gonna be a jerk, which is not nice, or are you gonna ease him into overcoming it? And how you do that will determine if Croak becomes a more lethal weapon or becomes, a more tamed weapon. It's all in the works. It's all in the works. Nothing's set in stone. Then we just gotta add a few menu systems, save systems, and last but not least, the music, which throughout this video,
All the music in here is current music being developed for the game. It's definitely not the final state of it, but you know, it's good for right now. A lot of it will be extended, maybe changed up, stuff like that. So that is Croak and Dagger. If you like this project and want to follow it, feel free to subscribe. I'll also have probably a few links down in the description. I don't know. But yeah, our goal, well, I say our goal. My goal for the end of the semester is to try and get this game in a proper demo state by around the end of April. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. Hopefully, I don't know, I can't speak for my team, but yeah. So stay tuned for more upcoming frog shenanigans. See ya.